Welcome back. I'm in the Mantralaya in the office of the Additional Chief Secretary to the Government of Maharashtra, Chandra Iyengar. She's a 1973 batch IAS officer and she's credited with having drafted a first of its kind policy for women for the Government of Maharashtra. And she's our woman this week on the Double X Factor. Chandra Iyengar, it's lovely to have you on this show.
Delighted.
Chandra, today your key charge is the home portfolio, and as a result of which you're dealing with cops and the Nakshal issue in Gadchiroli. And yet when you did this policy, when you wrote this policy, a policy that has become a sort of template for a lot of subsequent policies, this is a matter that's close to your heart.
Gender?
Yeah.
Oh, very, 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 very. I think the gender issues in almost every area. I mean, we're talking 50% of the population. We're talking a completely different mindset. I mean, okay, we're all human beings, and to that extent, we're common. We have a shape, but we have a different way of thinking. And I think the more that difference is brought into decision making in every aspect of life, governance, society, I think society benefits much more by that, and I'm completely passionate about the fact that this is an agenda that needs to go forward.
The security of women and violence against women is one of the key areas that the government needs to focus on in that policy that was drafted. And it says 5 years from 94, 25% of police stations will be headed by women. We are in 2010, Chandra Iyengar. The police force is now directly under you.
Well, I have to say that that policy was a dream. A lot of it came true. There's a lot of wishful thinking. But I think what has happened is that we had 30% reservation in government jobs. And I think that has really proved we've got a lot of constabulary, a lot of women at the various levels. And this year, after, the Home Minister did say that we are moving towards police stations headed by women, and I think we found 2 or 3 in Mumbai city and in the state where we actually posted a woman. We're getting there, Anu. We're getting there.
When women are in leadership positions, do they behave the same as men do?
Well, I think in the beginning, those are the only role models that we have. I mean, maybe the next generation or the current generation have got women in power whom they can look up to, but to a large extent, most of us had to look around and see how we also had careers to move into and what was the best way of doing it. So we copied what we saw. But I think as you came to middle level or higher level, you suddenly realized that you can't be somebody different and yet do what you wanted to do. So I think as you grow higher up, I would say this for government, that most of us women who are in senior positions in government have become comfortable about the fact that we think like women and we behave like women.
And there is a clear distinction.
I would think so. I think we approach a problem differently.
You saw the implementation of that 73rd Amendment and, therefore, 33% of reservation for women in local self-government bodies. You saw the implementation of that up close. How did men react? Because we saw how men behaved in the Rajya Sabha when the Women's Reservation Bill for the Lok Sabha and state assemblies was passed.
I think that one needs to not be coy about the fact that this is a power struggle. Okay, I mean, the only genuine difference that there is in nature is between man and women. Everything else is man-made. And I genuinely believe that it's necessary to do, some things happen organically, some things have to be forced is maybe the right word for it. I can't think of another word, but engineered maybe.
And you have no doubt in your mind about the fact that reservations are absolutely important if you want to ensure that women are empowered and are an equal participant in the development process.
Oh, completely. I am, numbers matter in a democracy. If they were adequate numbers, your reaction to rape bills would be very different because a lot of women would be visceral about it. Numbers would make sure that priorities would be equal, if not different. I mean, I would say that women would bring in a different set of priorities. And I think also women would be emboldened to be themselves or talk about what matters to them. It took the domestic violence bill 15 years to see the light of day. And I don't think anybody is in any doubt that domestic violence is an issue in this country, or any country for that matter. Why only this country? It would have been a bit easier if there were more women, because they would have been, you know, the more less defensive, more aware of the problem, I think. And I think that for anybody, man or woman, to be isolated in a group is a huge, I mean, I think it gives you a sense of anxiety and apprehension. One of the arguments, if you'll pardon my taking this a little further, is that if you want equality, why do you want reservations? The answer to that is really equality can only be amongst equals. If you take any of the quality of life indices, health, education, whatever, women and men aren't equal. Not in this country, not anywhere in the world. So you cannot talk about equality when one side is so patently unequal. I mean, you have third generation educated men and first generation educated women in the same family. So unless you do something, unless you're proactive about bringing them up on par, you really cannot then say that they're equal.
Interestingly, Chandra, you know, every time I speak to people in corporate India, women in leadership positions in corporate India, when it comes to offices and companies, they don't want to see reservation. They say that quite categorically. How do you explain that? In fact, you know, a lot of them make this point about let's not do tokenism. We need the best person for the job, and then if it happens to be a woman, we'll welcome her with open arms. But let's not do symbolic lip service. Where do you stand on this?
Okay, let me just be politically completely incorrect on this. I am a great believer in tokenism. I think we're a culture which has been brought up on tokenism, and I think we have done very well with it. And let me give you a couple of very, very small examples. We are a culture which takes care of the vulnerable sections, which are the older people and the children. I've always felt that we are taught to touch the feet of our elders, not because, you know, I'm sure all of us have very, very strong views on our grandparents, our parents, and so on and so forth, but we will touch their feet because that is a token that these are people whom you do not abuse. And I think that tokenism has served us. And I think the answer to this whole thing about boards or committees or government is that if there is a token woman, you keep looking at that woman and you say, maybe, yes, I need another one. Maybe I should get a better person. Maybe I should look around for a better woman. But that reminds you of the fact that there's 50% of the population out there which needs representation. I think tokenism is a huge reminder, and I don't buy this, because if you don't start with what you have, you will never reach where you want to reach. I mean, we all start with what we have. We don't have that many women, so let's be token. I mean, in a board or in a committee, government committee of 10, 15 people, so what if one person is token? I mean, are we suggesting that everybody on every committee, on every board is this hugely contributory, productive individual? I'm sure we have token men also on boards.
Does the glass ceiling work in the same way? Do you get up to this much and then suddenly you can't go further? Does that happen? Have you felt that, Chandra?
Well, let's put it this way. The thing is that government, unlike non-government sectors, is genuinely equal opportunity, in the sense once you're in, there's nothing that's different between what you get in terms of pay package perks and your male colleagues. What is different is the kind of job that you're given. And you know, we as women have lobbied over this past number of years for being given a similar kind of jobs. When I joined, it was very different. We weren't given what are called field postings, which is collectors or SPs, superintendent of police, or the chief executives of the Zilla Parishads, because they felt you wouldn't be able to handle the politicians, you wouldn't be able to handle crowds, you wouldn't be able to handle law and order situations. So we just, you know, it was like the Chinese torture. We just went on and on and on and said, give us a chance, give us a chance, give us a chance. And because they couldn't sack us, they gave us a chance. So we went in, and now it's become, nobody seriously questions it at a certain level. Yes, as you came higher, I mean, for the fact that this is the second time that there's a woman sitting in the home department, and you know, this is a department which sees terrorist attacks, Naxalism, violence, I mean, you name it, not to mention the day-to-day tensions of, I think we're getting there. I will not say that there's no difference. Of course, there's a difference. I think
gender comes in the way of getting the final top job sometimes.
Well, I think gender, let me put it this way. I think gender is an issue. It's not as much of an issue as it was. And maybe over the next 5-10 years, it won't be an issue. But I wouldn't be very truthful if I said that gender was not an issue.
Okay. Chandra, the number of women in the IAS has gone up. In 2007, it was 143 of 638 candidates who cracked the exam. And yet, that service, the civil services has no reservation for the number of women it takes in. Would you recommend it?
Well, that's a tough one, Anu, frankly. Okay, let me put it this way. We have reservations in the state of Maharashtra for the Maharashtra Public Service Commission. And I think that's done an enormous, it's done a lot of good in terms of the way the system delivers. Okay? The fact with the IAS and IPS is that we are only 100 or 150. Now, whether you want 30% of them are women or not, but in a generic principle, I think reservations help enormously. And
so, would you recommend it or wouldn't you recommend it?
Oh, I think we should have reservations for women right through.
Okay. Let's take a break at this point. We'll talk more with Chandra when we come back, and we'll also get your story on how companies are going back to the drawing board to woo women consumers. More in just a bit.